If you have a very short decay, if you have a very long decay, hello everybody and welcome to another YouTube video. Happy New Year to everybody. So in today's video, we're gonna learn all about reverb. So you would have seen different knobs that are available in a reverb, and you probably just turn the knob up and down and just play along with it. But do you really know what the meaning of those knobs are and how to use them? If you are somebody who uses reverb often and you never knew what the purpose of each knob was, then you are in the right video. So today we're going to learn all about reverb and what the purpose of each dial in the reverb plugin is. So without any delay, let's get started. So first of all, why do we need a reverb? Adding reverb to your tracks gives it a space of width and depth. It makes the sound more full and it brings more life to your tracks. And to be honest, I almost add reverb to almost all the tracks, and I add it through an aux so that a duplicate track is being made and I can control the reverb separately without it affecting the actual signals and stuff like that. Reverb is a very powerful and a very essential element to any kind of song that you make, and that is the reason why it is important to learn about it and use it wisely. Otherwise it has the potential to even muddy up the entire track and make unpleasant sounds or include unpleasant noises to your track. Let us first open a reverb plugin. So you can do that by going to audio effects, go over to reverb. My favorite reverb that I often use is chroma verb. So let's take mono to stereo. Always try to use reverb as a stereo, okay, so that you can hear that full effect both in your left and in your right speakers. So this is a reverb plugin. Alright, we have a lot of knobs over here. We have something called attack, size, density, decay, distance, dry and wet. Let us learn one by one what these knobs are and what they contribute to your tracks. We might not be going in that order. We are changing it a little bit so that it'll be easier to understand. Alright, so let us first take size. Size is nothing but the size of the room that you are in. Okay, so if you imagined your tracks to be in a very big room, then you need to increase it. If you want it to be in a very small room, you need to decrease it. The higher the percentage, the larger the room, and the smaller the percentage, the smaller is the room. Alright, let me just add a track and increase and decrease it and show it to you. So I have just played a small piano melody over here. So let us add a reverb to this. Okay, so I'm just gonna switch off this EQ, go to Sense, go to aux1, and I've already added reverb. Okay, so I'm gonna open it and I'm gonna increase it a bit. Now with very less room size, it's a very minute difference, but size basically determines the room that your track is in. That will change depending on the percentage that you use. Okay, now let's move on to density. Density determines the amount of reflection that comes back. For example, if you have a very high density, meaning if you have a higher percentage, your reverb will sound thicker. All the reflections will sound very thick. In contrast, if your density is very less, or if the percentage is very less, the reverb will sound very thin. In other words, like I said, the reflections will be very thin. So let's change it and see how it's happening. Now let's increase it. So the density will make the reflections thicker or thinner. Moving on, we have a knob called Decay. So like the name suggests, it determines how long it takes for the reverb to die out. If you have a very short decay, if you have a very long decay, So it determines how long it takes for the track to finish the reverb, okay? Especially decay, you know, a higher decay will sound really well in lo-fi tracks where, you know, there is a lot of reverb going on, and not adding the decay very high to the entire track, instead automating it here and there so that it really pops up, really enhances the entire song, okay? So that is the purpose of decay. Now let's move on to the distance. So distance determines how far away the track is from the listener. Say for example, I have it at 0. Let's increase the decay a bit. So it sounds very close to you, right? Now let's say my distance is at 75%. Now let's listen. So it sounds like it's coming from a very far off distance, right? So that is the purpose of distance. If you have a lead vocal, you will definitely don't want it to be very far away from the listener, right? You need it as close to the listener as possible. So it will not make sense if the distance is very far away for a lead vocal. Instead, if you have some other percussion elements or any other elements that add some nice effects to your tracks, maybe adding them a little behind and, you know, putting them in the background helps a lot in the track. Now let's look at attack. Imagine you're in a room. Imagine this is the room, and when I am talking, there is definitely reverb in this room. Every room has one kind of a reverb to it, okay? So what I'm talking goes around me and hits all the walls and bounces back, okay? So that is reverb, and those are the reflections. Attack helps you to adjust the reflections, okay? Whether you need a very early reflection or a late reflection. If your attack is very low, that means your reflections become very quick. It quickly bounces off the places and it comes back to you. All the reflections comes back to you immediately. If your attack is high, that means the reflections take a longer time to reach the listener's ear. So let's experiment with it and see how it works. Let us keep 0% attack, and when I play, now let me keep it to 90%. So the reflections are determined by this knob. Now let us look at pre-delay. Pre-delay determines how long it takes for the reverb to begin. So basically you have the dry signal, that is the original signal without any reverb, correct? Pre-delay, if it is 0, that means the reverb starts immediately. Now if my pre-delay is set to some millisecond, so let us keep it to 80 millisecond, that means only after 80 milliseconds the reverb will begin to come, or the reflections will begin to happen. You can hear sort of a delay kind of sound. Listen to it properly. So it's like ta-dan, ta-dan, ta-dan. So the second sound that you hear every time is actually the reverb. So it's taking so much of time to even reflect and come back to us, right? So that is the purpose of pre-delay. So having it at very high time is more of a creative thing that you can experiment with, but you know, it doesn't have to be this high always, or typically for our tracks we don't have to keep it this high. Maybe around 8 milliseconds or 5 milliseconds will do the job. You can even have it without any pre-delay as well, as long as it sounds good and as long as you like it. There's another option in pre-delay where you can sync it with the tempo of your project. You can set any tempo. Okay, so that is also a possibility in Logic's plugin. Moving on, we have something called as a dry and a wet. Wet depicts the reverb, okay? It doesn't have any of the original audio. It only has the reverb volume. So what happens if I reduce it? So let's check it. So what you're hearing right now is just the raw dry signal, okay? It's just a signal that I just recorded. If you need reverb, this knob has to be high. And basically dry signal is just another copy of the dry signal that we already have. So let me show you. So actually what's happening is when I add a bus and add reverb, this channel strip has the original track that I just recorded, and this bus track or the aux track has another duplicate version of the same audio. The purpose of this duplicate version is to only add reverb or delay, all those wet plugins to add over here, so that your actual audio is remained untouched. Okay, it doesn't interfere with the reverb whatsoever. All that you're doing or all that you're working on is with a duplicated signal. So definitely this gives you a lot of flexibility, right? It gives a lot of flexibility to work and concentrate only on the reverb, or in our case it's reverb, but later we'll study about delay as well. So only to focus on those elements that add wet signals to your track. You might be wondering what these graphs are. So well, they are nothing but an EQ. So for example, so this EQ is only affecting the reverb, okay? It's not affecting the main signal's EQ. Majority of the times, you don't need a lot of low frequencies that come as a result of adding reverb. So in that case, you can just cut them all out like that. Or you can just add another EQ plugin over here and then do the same thing. But that is the purpose of these graphs, okay? So they are nothing but an EQ. And then we have another option over here. So the standard option that comes is room. But if you need it in some other place like a chamber or a concert hall, maybe let's try hitting a concert hall and see how that's coming. Okay, I would like to try airy. And another cool thing is that there are a lot of presets available in the Reverb plugin, especially in Chroma Verb. Now we have piano, and I want it in an emotional piano space. You can just click that. Doesn't it sound lovely? So you can just tweak some things a little bit. Maybe you want it to be a little more farther away from you. You can just increase the distance a bit. So there are a lot of presets, and I generally use this one. So there is an vocal ambience, right? I use it predominantly for almost all the vocal tracks that I have, and I just tweak things a little bit and automate things so that it'll sound more full in places that I want and a lot more subtle in places that I don't want it to, be prominent. These are the general knobs that you'll be working with while you're, handling a reverb plugin. There are, however, a lot of other things that you can also do with a reverb plugin. Like for example, if you hit this details, you can open up this part of the plugin as well. You have a lot of other things over here like smoothing, early, late, width, and things like that. But for now, I would, rather stick with the first page of the plugin and first use all these knobs, get familiar with the sound that you listen to while changing these knobs. And once you are familiar with that, you can move on to the other detailed portions of the plugin. I would say this is more than sufficient for you to, create amazing tracks and creating amazing, dimension to your tracks with this plugin. And if you don't want these colorful things that you see over here, you can just unclick this and that, okay? But if you are a person like me who likes a lot of visual things and you like to see all these visual depictions and stuff, you can very well switch it on. If you have seen my EQ video, you would know by now what this Q means, right? So it is Q factor, and basically when you click something and then you increase it or decrease it, you can see some changes, right? If you don't know what this Q means, I will put the link of what is EQ, the video, that video's link over here, so you can just click that and watch it and understand what these different things mean. And it's not necessary that you need to only use Chroma Verb. You can use other reverbs as well. There are so many other reverbs like Space Designer, Silververb, Nverb, and these are stock, okay? And these are pretty good reverbs to use. They pretty much have all the same things everywhere, okay? So you just try and experiment with it and see which reverb plugin you like the most, see which setting you like the most, and if you really like a setting that you have done, save it as a default. I hope you guys learned something from this. Try reverb and try to use it through an aux and automate it, change different settings and see which suits your track. I'm sure now when you use your reverb, it won't be just to change knobs and listen to it and think okay, it's fine. Now you know the technicality of using a plugin and what the purpose of each knob is. And like I said, it may not be a very dramatic change, but those subtle changes directly impact your track. With that in mind, work with your tracks and work with this plugin. I hope you guys like this video, and I'll see you guys in another video. So until then, take care, keep making music, and see you guys.